All right, joining us on the news for overview of flooding in Nigeria, what state government rather, can do differently through heeding to early warning signals and provision of emergency infrastructure to cushion the impact of flooding. Actually, to even stop it, is environmentalist Professor Desmond Majekodunmi. Thanks for joining us, Desmond.
Good to be here.
Good. What do you make of government's response to flooding in Nigeria and in states?
It's been quite lethargic, but it's not just the Nigerian government, it's a global issue. The reality is that the warning that this kind of thing would happen was given about 25 years ago. Yes, because we are experiencing an unprecedented heating of our atmosphere due to the massive amounts of pollution that we're pumping in there. But we did not heed the warning. Till today, very few governments in the world are heeding the warning that we're actually pushing the capacity of this climate to maintain life as we know it beyond a certain point. We're pushing it far too hard. And hopefully, the silver lining of this terribly dark cloud of what happened to those poor people in Mokwa. I mean, what a terrifying situation. You go to bed at night and you hear the rain falling, and then the next thing you're hearing roars of water, you're hearing people screaming. What a horrendous thing. But the silver lining is that now we are accepting the reality that this is the classic symptom of climate change that we were warned about many years ago. And definitely, we need to take far more proactive action. We need to really, really be careful. We just hope that we don't get too many of these incidents this year. But I can assure you that next year and the year after, there shall be very heavy rainfall. In fact, the United Nations Secretary General, he refers to it no longer as rainfall. He says we're having rain bombs because it's the most basic fundamental of physics. More heat, more evaporation, heavy rain. And you can't even be too sure how heavy it's going to be. So we need to take a lot of proactive measures. This is very serious. It's a huge alarm for all of us.
Serious indeed. A woman lost a husband, 7 children, and a co-wife. And of course, billions were lost in this. Our government, is the government, both at the state and the local and the state levels, are they really, really heeding to those warnings? That is one. And you talked about being proactive. So what should be the proactive actions that the government, both at the state and the federal, should be taking to prevent this,
very, very
going
good.
forward?
Yes. Absolutely. Okay, there are some immediate measures that can be taken. And that is, first of all, just to ensure that people who are in the slightly more vulnerable areas, although it's difficult to assess which particular area is that vulnerable. For instance, last year in a place called Valencia, Spain, where they've never had big flooding, they had 1.5 years rain fell in 8 hours. So everywhere is more or less vulnerable. But there are areas that are actually very vulnerable, and we need to find a way to ease people out of these areas. But one of the things that's making a lot of these other areas vulnerable is the fact that the streams and the rivers have been silted up due to massive erosion. So the capacity of those streams and rivers to carry away the floodwaters is diminished. So what should have happened, because we knew this kind of thing was coming, and they had mentioned it, that they're going to dredge the streams and the rivers in order to give them a better capacity to remove the floodwater. And then also look at the cause of why are the streams and rivers getting silted up? Because of erosion. What's causing the erosion? Deforestation on the highlands, and deforestation and removal of vegetation on the banks of these streams and rivers. So we need to regrow. We need to just return to nature. what she has. Nature has very, very good systems. But unfortunately, we as human beings generally, not just in Nigeria, we have been impacting far too negatively against nature's wonderful systems. So that's definitely one of the things that we need to do, regeneration, and we need to dredge those streams and rivers. Very, very important. Then on a more sort of medium and long term, Nigeria, as the giant of Africa, needs to bring other African nations together, because the irony is that most of the global warming, as I'm sure you're aware, it was not caused by us. We are not the major polluters, but we're feeling the effects. However, if we can come together as brothers of one continent and make our voices heard and demand for assistance in adapting and mitigating this problem, then we can also be able to develop more sort of infrastructure for assisting with the drainage. But if we're just going to be arguing and having petty quarrels over ridiculous nonsense things, then it's going to get a lot worse. And if we look at the reality of the situation, why are we facing this global warming as human beings? When over 20 years ago, the scientists have said, stop your emissions, stop your wrecking of the rainforest, stop destroying nature. Because there's one thing about nature. She gives you back what you give her, And we've been causing far too much damage to her various ecosystems and not appreciating the fact that we call it environment. It is our life support system. And not only is it our life support system, it's our children's. So we have there's no justification for the damage that we're causing. It's a wake-up call to the whole of humanity. And Nigeria can lead Africa in shouting and blasting that alarm, because guess what? The world needs Nigeria the world needs Africa more than Africa needs the world.
All right. Well, 1.5 years reign in just 8 months, calamitous, you talked about it. What do you make of the action that the federal government has taken 2 billion to support, and then some other actions? What do you make of it, just briefly?
Well, it's a good step in the right direction. It's belated, but at least it's good. There is an expression of empathy, but there needs to be a lot more. And the reality is, the leaders need to understand the job description. They are civil servants, so they better start serving the people far more effectively. Otherwise, they also will get the repercussions. This is not just physics of action begets reaction. It's also metaphysics. It's there in every scripture. You get retribution coming at you. You get kifara. You get karma. So they need to be a lot more active. But we're encouraged. We're encouraged to see what has been happening, but there needs to be a lot more. We need to really, really prepare for next year and the next couple of years to come, because there's going to be a lot more rain bombs in a lot more areas. And a shout out to NIMET. They're doing a good job, and they need to continue giving the warnings and trying their best to alert people about the reality.
All right. Civil servants, they need to serve the people. They need to do a lot more. Thank you so much, flood environmentalist Professor Desmond Majekodunmi, for your time on Horizon.